Hello and welcome to the Vocal Sound Healing Podcast. My name is Alexandra Rigazzi-Tarling. I'm a vocal coach and technician, and I'm a vocal sound healing practitioner and trainer. And I've been working with voice for well over 25 years and training vocal sound healing practitioners for about the last 10 years. And I bring everything to this podcast: sound healing, and voice for discussion. So, welcome to episode 13, Refining Your Fundamental Frequency. So, what do we mean when we talk about frequency or our fundamental frequency? And some might link this to finding your fundamental tone, as in the most healing pitch for you, the pitch that your body resonates to. But actually, we're going to go much deeper here because what we're talking about is the frequency or the signal that you're sending out into the world. So let's just backtrack for a moment. If you've listened to my podcast before this, you'll know that I'm speaking from a sound and vibratory perspective and the paradigm that everything as we know it, everything that consists of matter and light, is vibrating at a particle, atomic, and subatomic level. And that includes us. So we're made up of solid form. And so at the base of it all, we're a mass of vibrating energy. And if every part of us is vibrating, then we can deduce that we're sending out a sound, a frequency. And if you want to dive into this even further, I can highly recommend Dr. Catherine Clinton's new book, Optimize, which examines the body as a vibratory being from a quantum biological perspective. And there are just so many answers when we look through the quantum biology lens, especially as sound healers and as voice workers. So, if we're looking from this perspective that every part of our body is vibrating to a different frequency, but overall, when all of the parts of our body vibrate in harmony and we experience wellness, there is an overall composite frequency, a frequency that, in sonic terms, really is the definition of who we are. And that could be in any given moment for the positive or for the not so positive. And our voice has a lot to do with this, as the voice is a reflection of all that we are on so many levels of being. It's a sort of somatic reference point or reference signal, as it shows us, the sound of our voice shows us where we have blocks, stagnation, traumas, and so on in the energy field. But the thing with this and with the voice is that we're often able to hide it through speech. And we can cover up all sorts of things about how we feel by using words, accent, pitch, really how we're conditioned to say things. We can hide ourselves in speech, which I think is why we often feel so vulnerable when we take words away, when we work with pure vocal sound and singing. But we're going to go deeper than that, deeper than voice, if that's possible. Let's discuss the energy that we send out into the world other than our vocal sound. So the subconscious or even conscious signal, if we can learn to do that every day. So that energy, that signal, that is our fundamental frequency, that energy that we're sending out, usually subconsciously, but we can make it conscious. If we're really working with this, we can make this conscious. I guess in a way, that's what this podcast is about, learning to make this conscious. But that energy that we send out, that is our fundamental frequency. And whether we like it or not, that energy has far more to do with how life ends up, how things happen to us, how people respond to us, how things flow in our lives, our success in certain areas, and how we're received by those around us. That is all due to our fundamental frequency, whether we know it or not. And, so how do we know what frequency or signal we're sending out? And this is the thing, because it's not something that is purely mental as far as making a decision to send out a certain frequency. We don't just decide to do it. Although we can work with adjusting our frequency with the mind for a sort of quick fix or a short amount of time, like deciding that it's going to be a positive day or deciding that you're going to do well in an interview, something like that. Sort of chanting a mantra over and over that you're strong and that you're confident and that you can achieve anything. And I do believe in this self-talk. I do believe in affirmation. But I think it can often be a band-aid for something deeper going on. And it's that deeper aspect we're looking at, that fundamental aspect that affects our fundamental frequency. So, as we've said, our body is made up of all of these vibrating parts. Everything from our major organs to the liquid matter in our blood to the 70% water that makes up our human body, and everything, including the vibrating space in between all of those parts. And this includes our subtle energetic bodies as well, our emotions, so emotion, energy and motion, all of our conditioning, our experiences, our traumas, stuck energy that isn't flowing, everything, everything that we are, all of this. And our frequency, our fundamental frequency, is affected by everything that we are. All of those things I've just mentioned. Solid vibrating to the more subtle energetic. And as a vocal sound healer, I'm working with healing voice. Really healing voice is working somatically with the voice. And vocal sound healing working in people's energy field with the voice. I witness firsthand what people are carrying around in their energy field in terms of unresolved emotions, experiences that are still very real, and squirreled away from the world. All of this stuff that we've been through, all of this emotion that we hold, we often squirrel it away because that's how we cope, isn't it? We can't process what's happened, so we leave it for another time, hoping it'll go away. But of course, it doesn't go away. We've just found somewhere to put it within our energy. And that thing, whatever has happened, has a vibration and it lives within our energy field. It forms who we are. And that is contributing literally to our overall fundamental frequency. It's contributing to how we show up in the world. Everything that we have ever experienced, ever seen, ever felt, ever heard is in there somewhere. And whether that energy or that thing is flowing coherently or not within our total body energy depends on whether we have processed it or not. So there are feelings then that we might be aware of that are building because of experiences that we've had, and whether or not they've been processed energetically. So, for example, something might have happened to you and it's created a fear in doing something else that's challenging you. Or maybe, you had a bad breakup and now you have a fear of being hurt. Or there's deep sadness, or there's shame, or there's so many things that could be in there because of something that has happened, but it's triggered all of these other things. And until that original event that caused that has been chanced to be processed, to be dispersed energetically, those other emotions are coming as a result of that. And those fears and those emotions are living in the energy field too. And they are emitting a signal, which is contributing to that overall signal, which, of course, as we said, is our fundamental frequency. That's what we're putting out into the world. So when we come to do something, whatever it is, we need to ask ourselves, what frequency are we really communicating? Am I truly in touch with who I am, with what I have experienced, and how that's affecting me now? And it might be that, you are in touch with it and you are okay with it and you are aware of it and you are working with it. And that will also affect your frequency. So, there's different stages and phases of this, but if there's stuff going on in there that you're not aware of, that's contributing to how you're showing up in the world, that's what we need to look at. That's when we need to look at refining this fundamental frequency. So, for example, it's just a superficial example. There are so many examples of this, and I'm just going to, reference it in terms of vocal sound healing and people I work with. Perhaps it's helpful for you if you're listening to this podcast. But for me, I see this particularly in my work with, say, training vocal sound healers and vocalists. So for vocal sound healers, it might be underlying insecurities about working one-to-one with clients, or perhaps starting up a vocal toning group, for example. The person might have done all the training and be really headstrong about making it happen, but for whatever reason, it's not quite happening the way it could. It's happening, but maybe the person isn't getting as many one-to-one clients that they need to really embrace working with for themselves. Or maybe they've started up a group, but they're not attracting as many numbers to the group as they need to, keep it running, for example. And this is really tricky because the mind is saying, well, I've done the training, I've done the advertising, I've got a website, I post regularly on social media or whatever it might be, but it's not happening as I imagined. Now, that imagery is an important part of manifestation, but it's not the only part. It's about feeling as well. It's not just about the image, it's about how we feel about what we're creating. And that's not just what the brain tells us. We're going deeper than that. What else is going on? Because it's at these times that we need to be really honest with ourselves about how we feel. And we need to really dig deep, because sometimes the fear is not immediately obvious. So, if we're trying to achieve something, but deep down we hold fears around aspects of the thing we're trying to achieve, then what signal are we sending out? What frequency are we sending out? And if you want to work with people, but actually you're not really a big fan of people and you prefer to work on your own, then that's going to show up in what you attract, for example. And let's say if you're starting out with a therapy and a healing business, but you've got a lot of healing to do on yourself, on past traumas, on pain, then it might be that you're sending out the signal, instead of as a healer, one who needs to be healed. So you're advertising yourself as a healer, but on the inside, you need the healing. And there's a big conflict there, because the signal you're sending out is the other way around. It's a contradiction. So it's like, what's really going on? Who are you really? What are you sending out? And fear is a funny one. I remember years ago when I started on my healing journey, the big feel the fear and do it anyway sort of craze was everywhere. And I'd lived my former performer life. I was an opera singer. I'd lived exactly like that, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And it got me nowhere. I felt the fear and the anxiety every day. I felt the fear of not being good enough, of not getting where I needed to be in my career by a certain time. I had the fear of what everyone else thought of me. There were so many fears. And at the start of my healing journey, I was an expert in feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So much so that I had no idea where the fear stopped and where I began. And fear is a crippling frequency. That's enough to send everything out of whack. I didn't know where that fear stopped and where my frequency began. That frequency of fear had become so intertwined with who I was. All I knew was to keep going, make it work, keep pushing harder, until eventually my body was getting ill all the time. So whenever I had a big concert, something that was really big, something I was waiting for, a big performance, something like that, something that would really make a difference to my career, I ended up getting a cold, losing my voice, and it went on. So what I'm saying is that I ignored all of those frequencies of fear. I learnt to block them out to the point where I didn't even know they were there anymore. Because I wasn't just ignoring them, I didn't even realize anymore. And also, what I didn't realize is that I was transmitting all that fear out as part of my signal because I hadn't even recognized it was there. And there used to be a saying sort of back in the audition days, if a performer was desperate, it could be detected a mile away. That someone going for an audition that was at the end of their tether, literally career-wise, and was trying, so hard to make it work, was literally sending out that frequency of desperation. And so it was inevitable that, things weren't going to go their way because desperation doesn't sell. People sense it. They don't know what they're sensing, but they know it's not for them. Fear and desperation are so far down on the frequency scale. So we have to really be honest with ourselves. What are we feeling? And, of course, it's natural to feel a sense of nervous excitement about a new project for a short while, when something's new. But that's all that needs to be. And excitement has a joy about it, not a desperation. Joy, very high on the frequency scale, desperation, the other end. Joy has that sort of solar plexus wholesomeness to it. There's a sort of light-heartedness and a creativity. It doesn't feel like the end of the world if, for whatever it is, doesn't materialize. That's the fear. Well, at least for me, because, perhaps you have to work out your own signals, but just sharing mine, because perhaps it gives you an idea of what I'm trying to communicate today. So when I work with people now, offering training to sound healers, let's say on how to work with groups, perhaps offering a sound bath or a voice healing group, for example, I always ask them to identify their motivation for running that group. So what is it that they want to bring to others? Why are they there? Why are they showing up for this? Because it's important before we ask others to show up that we know why we are showing up. And also to know what is the joy in showing up. So, if you're a business owner, a business, in the wellness field, for example, naturally you might be working with a group because you want to expand your offerings. And obviously you're reaching more people, you're expanding your business, and that's fine, perfectly legitimate reason. But what else? What's the inspiration for the work? A deeper motivation. Perhaps it's that you want to offer people the opportunity to experience the incredible healing benefits of sound because you truly believe that it holds the wellness key for so many as it did for you. Maybe it's as simple as that. Perhaps you feel like because when you watch the news or you look at all the horrible things going on in the world and social media, you feel so sad and disempowered that you can't make a difference. You feel that by starting with helping people with their mental health and well-being, one person at a time, one group at a time, that you could help contribute to the bigger picture in some way. Perhaps that's what keeps you going, by offering what you do and helping people to find their fundamental frequency, to clear all the crap away and find their joy. Perhaps that's what gets you out of bed in the morning. It's a deeper feeling than just business, than just money. You might have had terrible experiences in your life, witnessed abuse, suffering, all sorts of horrible things that you decide to offer a healing space for people. Perhaps that's in a vocal toning group, or I don't know what, you know, sound bath, whatever it might be, because you have experienced the benefits firsthand of knowing how things can turn around if you can be held safely, even just once a week, held safely in a space where you can just reset. And that even if that only happens to one person, and that one person goes home to their family and it makes a change within the family, that actually it was worth it. So there are so many deeper reasons why you might show up. And that's my point here, that it's our intention for our work. It has to come from that deeper place, because that is facing our fundamental frequency. That is looking at our experience. That is looking at who we are and working and operating from that place of offering something, contributing something to the big space that is the world. And that's where we start, because that intention holds a frequency far stronger than just that of money or business. It's far deeper than that. And then it's about showing up and supporting that intention. And there's a discipline there, showing up, supporting it, being in that, living that intention. And, taking this further, what if we were to run a group or event or something and only a few people show up? Does it matter? Does it affect our intention? And it doesn't affect our intention if it's strong enough, but it might hurt our ego. And that's another thing. That's a whole other thing for us to consider. What is our frequency? What is the frequency of our ego? What's going on there? So after I left the performance world and finished my sound healer training, I began offering sound baths. And this was back in, it's about 2014, I started offering this group work. And, very few people had even heard of a sound bath in those days. It wasn't anything like it is today in 2026. And, I'd done a lot of healing work on myself at that point, just, training to be a sound healer. It'd taken me 18 months. It's been a huge journey. And all of the healing that I had received throughout my training helped me balance how my ego was showing up in my life. But running a group event, the sound bath, for example, was actually really triggering for my ego. I was like, what if nobody comes? What if I hire the hall and I lose money? What if it doesn't work? How would I explain? Like, what if this? What if that? It just went on. And again, this was coming up to be healed. This is what had happened for me so often in my performer world, the opera world that I was in. So I was really aware of this trigger, and I was absolutely not going down that road again. I'd been there, done that, not happening again. So I just said to myself, how am I going to feel peaceful about this? So I said, if nobody comes, I will run this sound bath for the nature. And at the time, I was working out of a beautiful venue near a forest, and I love nature, I love trees, and I wanted to offer this healing to the earth. And every time I felt that fear rise, what if it wasn't going to work? What if it wasn't good enough? Instead of just feeling the fear and doing it anyway with that frequency, I said no. I said, we're here for the nature, we're here for the earth, we are offering something far deeper here. And I'm willing to pay for the hall to offer that service to the planet, to work in service for the planet, and become aligned with that purpose. And I said, if people want to come along as well, then so be it. But it actually wasn't for them, it was for the earth. That helped me shed all of the fear. I had a different purpose, a deeper meaning, and I said, even if no one shows up, I'm going to do it anyway. That didn't happen. They did show up, but that was secondary. I was communicating the frequency of peace and being aligned with what I was doing. And it had to be real because you can't fake that fundamental energy. What's inside is actually sending the signal outside. Anyway, I started the group with about 7 people. It grew really quickly to about 20. Sometimes I had 40 people, and they came from nowhere. Many of them I didn't know, and I hardly advertised in those days. I think it was right at the beginning of my sort of social media days. I just had a little website. But even when it got to really big numbers, I still did it for the nature. I never changed the frequency because it was that frequency that people were feeling, that they were tuning into, even though, of course, they were completely unaware. They just knew that they wanted to go. So, how do we know what fundamental frequency we're sending out? Whatever is going on for you, whether you're a vocal sound healer building your clients, or starting a new group offering, or whether you're just fed up with what you've always seemed to attract in life, start by defining your purpose. And this can start small and specific for, say, a business or a goal that you have, or even a purpose for your personal life. It doesn't have to be about work and business. So let's just say, for example, a purpose that a wellness business might be to create a safe space for people to improve their mental health and wellness. A life purpose might be to facilitate peace in the world through as many ways as possible. So that might be through day-to-day interactions with others, by cultivating peace in your home, by literally vibrating that energy of peace, by placing your thoughts in peaceful places. So you start to vibrate peacefully and you bring that vibration into this world, into the reality. And then when things come that don't bring you peace, notice how you respond. Look deeper into what is causing your shift in mood. Is it that there's something unresolved within you? Do you feel like you're being tested? What would help a peaceful feeling to return without you squirreling away that current emotion that you're feeling? So it's a real unraveling, it's a real observation, there's a real awareness. You start with a goal, let's say to be peaceful, it could be anything. And then, you place your energy in those peaceful ways, but you notice when that's disturbed. You notice what's causing that fluctuation. And journaling about what comes up is a great way to explore what feelings are going on beneath your response. So the response is the thing that happens that takes you away from the peace. And journaling about that, what triggered it, why, what else is going on. And it helps you see the true frequency, so the fundamental frequency that's actually playing out in your system. And once it knows it's being watched and it knows that you're aware of it, it starts to change. Awareness immediately brings the change. So, just jotting down any fears, any concerns, any roadblocks that come up that feel that's steering you away from the feelings and the frequency that you want to cultivate in an area of your life. And you'll be amazed what surfaces when you start becoming aware of it. Because the thing is, most of the time, we're not given the opportunity to define our purpose, which leads us to find our fundamental frequency, or at least the fundamental frequency that we want to cultivate. Most of the time, we're told what to do, and we get used to that. And we're conditioned into what we always feel we should, or what we have to do. And then we're no longer aligning with our purpose and what's rising within us. And it can get very tricky to untangle ourselves from that should, the should web, the web of having to do something, should doing something, until we finally break away and there's a huge shift in the frequency, or we get depressed and ill because everything gets stuck and suppressed. So actually giving yourself time to define why you feel a certain way versus the way you would like to feel about doing something is a useful exercise for actually defining your purpose overall and actually helping you define what it is you want to do, what it is you want to feel, what you want to cultivate in your life, why you're here, why you're even here. What do you want to do with this time? Because if we don't choose what we want and try to cultivate that, we're only a victim of circumstance. And that might seem like it's the case sometimes, even when we've chosen. But that defining frequency, once we've made a choice to try to cultivate a purpose and a frequency in our lives, there's a deeper force at play. And things materialize in ways you didn't expect that are still aligned with your goals. Because you're sending out that fundamental frequency from the depths of your being. Yes, you might be challenged along the way, but you're still sending out the frequency that you are aligning with. And that's part of a healing journey. So, as we go through this process, sometimes for many different things in our life, you might have lots of things at play. They'll all start to merge, but we start to understand ourselves better and we see where the triggers come from and the energies and the fears that we've been holding on to, sometimes for, a lifetime. We start to understand our patterns and why we might end up in the same situation over and over again. And this process of choice, this process of awareness and learning about ourselves is about taking responsibility for ourselves, for our frequency, how we show up in the world. And this is healing. This is a healing journey, that responsibility. That you're not, the product of somebody else and something else. It's you. What do you choose? And this happens very slowly. Well, sometimes it happens quite quickly. When it's going to happen, it happens. But this is about every day, small choices, how you feel, making choices about your feelings, where you're going to put your attention, where you're going to put your energy. This is what helps you define your frequency and refine your frequency, and therefore your signal and what you're sending out in the world. And that signal is what forges your direction in the world. So that defining, that refining of our fundamental frequency is where it starts. And back to our vibrating beings that we are. We are sound. We are sound. I'm not making it up. Science tells us we're sound. We're vibrating. We have a frequency. And we can live by the principles of sound healing. There was a podcast on that earlier on. But by living with the principles of sound healing, so acknowledging ourselves as pure frequency without all the millions of layers we put on top, the frequency that we are, we can bring healing into our own lives. And for all of those sound healers out there, vocal sound healers, wellness people, you bring it into your own life first, and then you're in a much better position to help your clients. So I hope that is useful in some way, shape, or form, folks. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening and bringing your energy to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify and share the podcast with anyone that you might think is interested. So wishing you well, wishing you all the best. Thank you and see you again soon. Bye for now.